So today I want to show you how I started to come up and practice these kind of quartal. By quartal I mean fourths, and quintal, fifths, is kind of like the inversion of that. These sorts of lines, and they're really inspired by piano player lines. And the first time I heard this in person, I was doing a concert at college. I was maybe my first or second year, and there's a really good faculty member that was sitting in named Joy Sanford. Man, she was an incredible player. And she played one of those lines, and I've never heard anything like that before then. So I asked her what it was, and she showed me it was just a bunch of stacked fourths, that she was just coming up the piano chromatically or in different shapes. And I was just like, wow, that sounds incredible. I had to learn how to do that. And so I started thinking about how I would go about something like that. And of course, you know, the only answer really is to sweep pick those lines and separate the notes in the left hand. So what I have today is basically kind of a template where you can start to work on that, and I'll go through it with you. So the easiest idea of doing this concept is also the hardest idea. The hardest part of this technique is making sure the left hand rocks between the notes and cuts off, doesn't let the two notes in the pattern blend into each other. You want them to be separate notes. So this first example, this perfect fourth on the 3rd fret, got the rocking motion of my left hand finger. And as you'll gradually get more coordinated, and you'll be able to speed it up. It's one of those things you want to practice like 4 or 5 times in a row, then try to speed it up real quick and see if it's gotten any better. And also, while you're on this example, I want to show you a couple things that'll help you practice and make you get better way quicker with this technique. Try with your second finger. It's a little harder. And your third finger too. Then of course your fourth finger. The sound that you want to go for, like I said, is you don't want the notes to overlap into each other on the 2 strings, but you definitely want the 2 notes to connect. So you want them to be as close as they can get to each other without overlapping, if that makes sense. That's the way the sound stays really unified and smooth, like a keyboard. So the other technique that you want to practice just on like that first measure, so the pattern is down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up, down. So the beat starts on the first downstroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. What you can do is you can shift over what note you begin and feel the beat 1 on, the downbeat on. So maybe I start on that second downstroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or maybe I start on the first upstroke as a downbeat. 3, 4. Or then maybe the last upstroke is a downbeat. 3, 4. Practice on all the fingers. As you go through those different rotations of that same figure, you'll find that it gets a lot smoother. So there you go. That's the hardest one because it involves using the same finger, and you can't. It's a touch. It's a special touch that you have to really make that sound good. So the next example there is just perfect fifths. This is the next shape that we'll want to learn. So all these examples in this lesson are all perfect fourths or perfect fifths. That's what quartal harmony really is. So there's perfect fifths. You could go through the rotations on those. Get it really even. It'll help you along. So then, if you go down and do those same intervals with the G and the B string, you notice the shape looks different. tuning's different. So the perfect fourth, you do with 2 fingers, and try with each set of 2 fingers you have. First and second, first and third, first and fourth. Try second and third, second and fourth, third and fourth. Same thing with the perfect fifth, the next part. Try as many fingerings as you can and really work out the coordination. Trust me, it'll pay off because all this builds on each other once you start to get into larger and larger sets of these that involve 3, 4, 5, and even 6 strings. All right, so then you go take it on to the D and the G string. You try the second rotation of that. The next rotation. Last one. Then just try it. See, it evened out quite well. The perfect fifth. And as you play on thicker and thicker strings, I find that these examples get more and more difficult. So you have to spend extra time. Especially when you get to all wound strings. You start real slow. Just like now I'm on the A string and the G string. Try to go through some rotations. 2, 3, next one. Next one. It helps. Perfect fifth. And of course you can practice on the low 2 strings. So basically those shapes are the fundamentals of everything that's in this lesson. That's why it's always good to start with just the 2-string shapes first, because everything builds on each other. What I want to do is I'm going to look at, I'm going to back up and I'm going to look at those examples that we just did and think about how you could apply them to maybe 3 different pentatonic scales. So you got the pentatonic minor, A minor, where you have A, C, D, E, G, and A, right? And you can find those notes all over the fretboard, in that order. And you find those intervals of fourths and fifths all over the place in that scale. Right? And you want to go through each string and kind of, play with that. I'll grab the B there, it's on that scale. But you also want to learn not only that in A pentatonic, but learn it also in E minor pentatonic, where you got E, G, A, B, D, and E. So you can find those fourths and fifths all over in that scale too. And finally, learn the B minor pentatonic. And you can think about those 2-string shapes, in there as well. Once you get familiarized with all three of those shapes, what you actually done is you've built a 7-note scale with those 3 pentatonic scales, the A Dorian scale. And there you can see a comprehensive, fretboard map of that whole scale right there. So within this scale, there's the possibility of all those fourths and fifths, all those quartal sounds on those 3 minor pentatonic scales. So you really start to find a whole lot more information with that. But notice, we're only using fourths and fifths of intervals. That's what gives this sound that distinctive quality it has. Okay, so the next example is this ascending fourth. And what I'm doing is I'm just going up anywhere that there's a perfect fourth in a parallel fashion in that A Dorian scale. Go backwards. Oh, that's not in there. It is. So, you can really, you can go up and down with that kind of stuff if you want. You could take that to another string, string, and you could go on and on and on. And also you could practice going up and down in the fifths in a parallel fashion. That's a little different, because the intervals fall differently. But you have it on the 5th fret, the 8th fret, 10th fret, 12th fret, 13, 15, 17, of course 20 again. All the way back down. Of course, you want to practice that on the other sets of strings too. And after practicing the fourths and the fifths ascending on different strings, you'll be able to see a lot of possibilities of doing both at the same time. We're kind of toggling between. And you can come up with a lot of really aggressive lines. And you really want to work this kind of technique pretty slowly on these 2 strings for a while. You probably spend 30 or 40 minutes, this beat or so, finding all the notes, listening to the technique, make sure the notes are connected but not overlapping. So there you go. That's pretty much the fundamentals you need to kind of build upon this technique. And I guess in the next lesson, I'll show you some stuff that you can do over 3, 4, 5, and even 6 strings of this kind of stuff. All right, see you then.